last week, I want to say it was last week, maybe it was even further back than that, but last week on the show, we covered a story that validated all of the digital rights activists in the frickin' world. Well, at least in the United States, but we'll go with world. Why not? It sounds better. When we found out that opposition to net neutrality was faked, and this was discovered by the New York Attorney General. They did an investigation. There were a bunch of anti-net neutrality comments submitted to the FCC's website. This was the second time around when the Trump administration repealed it, and Ajit Pai and all those folks. Well, guess what? They were all fake. State Attorney's General Office reached an agreement, millions in penalties on third-party services that generated the comments. So it was potentially up to 18 million, I think, was the number. It was about 18 million comments that were just fake. They weren't real. Okay, here we go. In total, about 18 million of the 22 million comments sent to the FCC during the debate over net neutrality were fake. The investigation found. And they wanted, so they were like, repeal net neutrality. Keep in mind, 83% of the American public is in favor of net neutrality. That's across the political spectrum. The other 17% either works for big cable or might not be aware of what net neutrality actually is. You hear a lot of people, defining net neutrality in a way where that's not what net neutrality actually is. So all these comments were fake. Now, we covered this story. We're not going to rehash all of it. But, Joe, you pointed out to me there was something that I forgot to mention that was pretty important. So I wanted to start there today, and I wanted you to let everybody know. What was the part that I forgot that's real important for people to know?
Well, the part you forgot is that the fake comments were not just fake comments. They were fake comments that were posted with real identities attached to them. And we're talking about, like, whenever you post to an agency website in this public kind of manner, you have to use your real identity and you have to provide your real mail address. And basically, these conservative, conservative is, well, it's not necessarily conservative, I suppose. Let's just say anti-net neutrality people took the data that they had, and they probably got this data in a legal manner, because whenever you sign up for something, you might say, hey, I agree to this policy, and you probably don't read it, but that policy might be saying somewhere in the line, in these really small letters, oh yeah, we can use this for other things. We can sign you up for these other things. And
they probably got it in a shady way, but not in a legal way.
Yeah, that's basically
probably a fair way to put it.
Because technically this is fraud when you think about it. So they basically just attached real people's names, real people's addresses to these comments and then posted them in mass onto the FCC website. And now, because when you post public comments on websites like that of the FCC, this becomes part of the public record. Now, these people who didn't really post anything about net neutrality, who might have actually been in favor of net neutrality, who might have just been neutral about the issue of net neutrality, now they're on the record as being in favor of repealing net neutrality, which is like, it should be fraud. It should be like one of the biggest scandals of all time, and the people who should be prosecuted and they should go to jail. And like, if I did this, if you did this, if we did, any portion of this, it would be identity theft. And yet they get away with it because of the manner in which they went through with it.
Right. Well, and there's these third-party services involved, and big cable is connected somehow. So it's like there's going to be some fines that are levied that'll probably be at best a slap on the wrist. But this should be as you're saying, this should have serious consequences. And I don't know like what all avenues might exist because I'm not a lawyer, but this is fraud. And it's so funny because you see, especially on the right, they love to scream voter fraud at the top of their lungs all the time. They always talk about voter fraud where people vote as other people or people try to vote. And that seldomly ever happens. It is when you look at issues of election integrity in our country, it doesn't even make it, in my opinion, the top 20 or 30. There are so many other more pressing things, and voter fraud seldom, if ever, happens. It's usually just used as a talking point to try to suppress the vote even further. Meanwhile, here's where those types of shady activities actually do happen, where they're stealing people's identities and doing things in other people's names. When it's big cable trying to get what they want, which is the repeal of a law that 83% of the American public is in favor of.
And it's worth mentioning that there were fake comments in favor of net neutrality as well. It's just those were actual fake identities and fake addresses. And in some cases, they were like really trolling people and being like, oh, yeah, using, fake porn actress sounding names. And they were having fun with that. And that's, you might say, hey, fake comments always troublesome. But that's better than, taking real people's identities and saying, oh, yeah, these people are against net neutrality and they want it completely repealed when they have nothing to do with this.
Yeah, it's remarkable. So, I mean, I think they need to reinstate net neutrality immediately for so many reasons. Although we do have net neutrality here in California, our state law was signed, but and that's why when people say, "Oh, well, the internet's fine and we don't have net neutrality," it's like, well, that's because people are battling it out. They've been taking it to court. They've been fighting it. States have passed net neutrality laws. So when these big cable companies can't unroll these huge anti-net neutrality packages because they can't unroll them in California or Washington State or New York, well, then that kind of ties their hands. So, yeah, we haven't seen massive effects of a post-net neutrality world. Thank a digital rights activist. But by the way, we have seen some effects. Go talk to some firefighters in California who got their data throttled by Verizon. And this could have happened even with net neutrality, but because there was not net neutrality at the time, because this was before our state bill was signed, because there was not net neutrality at the time, they had no recourse whatsoever. So we have seen the effects, and hopefully we don't see any more. But yeah, I appreciate you pointing that out. It is noteworthy that not only were they fake comments, but they were stolen identity fake comments. They were doing these things in other people's names. Man, I would have been so pissed off if I was one of them. What if someone has seen this show and they're like, Ron Placote, Get Your News On with Ron is one of 6 shows that actually talk about digital rights issues. There aren't many. There's like 12 maybe. There's a lot of digital rights organizations, but only so many shows that talk about the issues. But they would just to troll. They put like a fake, like an anti-net neutrality comment in my. Oh, I'd be so pissed off. I mean, there's 18 million of them. It's possible. There might be one in your name too.
Yeah.
They're like Rob Placote, get the editor too.
Yeah.
They're all they don't. I don't like net neutrality. I just do the show for gimmicks. Rob Placote. It's like, that's fake. I can't believe they did that.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned like the old Republicans who are like, oh yeah, voter fraud. Dead people are voting. There were literal dead people's names attached to these fake comments as well. Like there was dead people commenting, yeah, repeal net neutrality. And like, nothing from these people. They're not.
Which is kind of, I mean, that's just so on the surface ridiculous too. Because if it's a scenario where, your 90-year-old grandmother died 10 years ago at the age of 90, and she didn't even use the internet when she was alive, but she's opposed to net neutrality. And she's letting the world know from beyond.
Exactly.
She crawled through the earth to say, I have one message and one message only: net neutrality. Get rid of it. Can't have it. Can't have it.
Wow.
But thank you for pointing that out, Joe. That was that was a good catch and an important piece of this puzzle. And hopefully we get net neutrality back at the federal level very, very soon.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your